What is going on, everyone? It is your host with the most, the greatest producer you've ever seen, heard live on the airwaves in your entire life. And I am here, obviously, with the man behind the master greatness of everything that is baseball. He knows everything, always talks about it. Living legend, at least for me, living legend, James Scott.
I'll take whatever I can get, man. I am so excited for this season. We got a casual kind of stream going on today, nothing major. So, it's gonna be a good little bit for us here. So, Chris, what do we got on board today to talk to everybody about?
So, James and I hopped onto a video chat right beforehand, and James was like, I've got a curveball for you. And I was like, I don't like curveballs, especially when they involve me. And then James is like, you know what? We've done a lot of divisional breakdowns. We've done a lot of team breakdowns. Spring training's winding down right now, and we're about to see a lot in baseball. We've been talking a lot about stuff that's happening in baseball. And so James is like, how about you just throw a team at me, just throw random teams at me, and let me just break them down. Yes. Not the whole team, but the major part of the team, and James will predict how they're going to do.
Yeah, just the best of the best on the team. I figured that would be a good way of kind of entering the year and giving our takes on things.
Or
my takes on things.
So I'm actually going to throw some wild curveballs at James. Try and get him a little upset. Nah, I'm just joking, but not really. So I want to throw the first team out. I think James knows what I'm going to say.
Go ahead.
It's going to be the Arizona Diamondbacks. Oh, fooled you.
So that's an interesting team.
Tell me.
Now, baseball, because of the era we're in, it doesn't really reward the shift too kindly. New hat, by the way. See that? Look at this thing.
It's a really nice hat.
Yeah, I at some point I'll show all the side stuff because it has some stuff on the side too. Right now, baseball doesn't really reward players who pull the ball because of the shift. Even if those types of hitters walk more and typically hit for more power. Now, another reason that it doesn't really reward those is that some organizations, not all of them, a few organizations, think about approach the way that I do, which is the final point is the point of patience. You want a player who's getting up to that point, because after they get to that point, it's hard to continue to stay at that point without declining. So the Diamondbacks did something interesting. Their roster's almost completely made up of people who pull the ball. You look at Ketel Marte as a product of being a switch hitter. He's that way. You look at Eduardo Escobar, same deal. Cole Calhoun, he got like a torn meniscus, I believe, but he's going to be back, I guess, in the first half, which is modern medicine. And he's a pull hitter. David Peralta, same deal. He's a pull hitter. They got Asdrubal Cabrera to be their new second baseman. He's a pull hitter, switch hitter, same kind of deal there. And if you're looking at who's going to take over for like Christian Walker once the production starts to die down, it's another pull hitter. Granted, it's a guy who's got more contact ability, but he still pulls the ball a lot, and he's a lefty. So when I'm looking at their roster, I see a team that's going to hit for a lot of power and get on base a lot. But, I mean, they're going to get a lot of double plays because you're getting on base a lot, it's walks. You're not really, and you're pulling the ball so much that it's just going to be double plays a lot with that team. But they do have power. They do have an offense. They've lost Zach Gallen. We don't know how long he'll be out. He's like a fractured forearm. we don't know how long it's going to keep him. Madison Bumgarner, he's still good, I think, but if that's basically all you got, I mean, they have Luke Weaver. Maybe he breaks out. I don't think, I think it's going to be a slow incline for him. I think he's more of like an Ian Kennedy type, but without like the top years from Kennedy. Like more of a 3-starter, It would not surprise me with the offense that the San Francisco Giants have now that, Zach Gallen might be out an extended amount of time. But if Gallen is, they could finish with similar totals. I think very clearly the Rockies are the last place team there. But yeah, no, the Diamondbacks, they do have an offense. It's going to be double play prone, and that's not going to be too fun. I do love Eduardo Escobar. That's actually a baseball guy Sean pick. He liked him before me. I like Ketel Marte. It's just I worry about him being able to hit from the left side. He should be able to. He's had problems historically in his career with it. Mm-hmm. He should be able to hit from the left side. I think it's more of like the reason he didn't last year was, such a short season. Switch hitters, they take longer to heat up. Usually second half is when they're, they got both swings in line. So I think that in the case of Ketel, that's why his left-handed swing wasn't quite there. I really like Nick Ahmed. I think he's primed for an offensive breakout. Don't like what they have at catcher. Don't like what they have at first base, even though they're going to be getting an upgrade, if you will. I understand why people give Calhoun and Peralta value. They're both phenomenal defenders who are about 15, 20% above league average. Hold on a second. I should take this thing off at this point. Making noises and whatnot. I'm like, what is that?
You're like going back and forth. I'm like, what is that? I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, I'm going to take that off. But yeah, no, Peralta and Calhoun strike me as very similar players, very good defenders, maybe 15, 20% above league average, pull hitters, left side. I think that this is a team that doesn't have anything close to enough. And if I were in charge of this team, I would start trading people. They have a good farm system. Make it a great farm system. You have a lot of people you could trade. But specifically, my favorite players on the team are Ketel Marte, Eduardo Escobar, and Nick Ahmed. You look elsewhere on the roster, it's interesting players. And I would have added Cole Calhoun, but with the meniscus, I just worry, if you're having people coming back from these injuries so soon, I mean, I guess it's okay because the doctors are now approving it. Mm-hmm. But, I guess it's just my history. I've seen torn meniscuses, and it, in the past, keeps people out a lot longer. So it might be an adjustment that I have to make. Mm-hmm. Maybe Cole Calhoun does need to join them, but it's just, from my experience, it's a very serious thing. And, I can't imagine that he's going to be able to play with full confidence in it, if that makes sense. And he's the kind of guy who needs that for his value. Like, his value is a lot of diving catches. His value is hitting for power and using his legs to pull the ball. So it worries me a little bit. But definitely Eduardo Escobar. Big fan of Nick Ahmed. It's funny, my chat group. I did my first fantasy baseball league with them the other day. We have various connections to people in baseball. Like my buddy Nick, he went to high school with Nick Ahmed. My buddy Frank, his cousin,
James. We have Travis Perweiler saying, "Hey James," in the chat.
Oh, hey, how you doing, man? Good to see you. But yeah, no, I genuinely think that where were we talking about? We're talking about the Diamondbacks still, right?
Mm-hmm. Diamondbacks. And you said pulling back from, not pulling back, but the injury itself. You're talking about the injury itself, and then you went into talking about your fantasy league, and
Oh yeah. So my buddy Dave, his cousin's Jose Marmolejos. So we have very, like connections that are, from our past directly into the game. But it's just kind of fun when you're watching a guy like Marmolejos or a guy like Nick Ahmed. They look like they're going to have pretty good years, and it's like, oh well, that's cool. That's connected to my buddy and whatnot. So anyway, where was I? So the Diamondbacks, that's basically them. But yeah, my favorite players on them are Cattell, Escobar, and Ahmed. And there you go. That's their team. And on the pitching side, Mad Bum. Love Mad Bum. Like, I still believe Mad Bum can do big game pitching. Like, I still believe he can do that kind of caliber pitching. I don't know if he can be the kind of guy he was in the past during the regular season. I don't think he has the fastball velocity to do it, which sucks. I wish he did, but I just don't see it. Give me another team.
I know. I'm like trying to think really hard right now. I'm like, as you were winding it down, I was like, oh my goodness. I'm like, what team do I want to do next? I don't know. And I'm like, I kind of want to stay away from a certain team, but I kind of just want to throw it at you because it's just like it they upset you so much. But you know what? I'm gonna actually stay away from them. I'm gonna stay away from there.
Yeah, I could just talk so much crap on them. Like,
we're gonna keep the good vibes going, and I actually am gonna throw Oakland Athletics at you.
They're an interesting team. They got, Jed Lowry, who's coming back from years of missed time. He's their second baseman now. They brought in Elvis Andrus, so now he finally has lineup protection. Stays in the same division, so that's cool. They have Sean Murphy, who's a really great hitter and can play catcher. The only problem is that he never is healthy, ever.
Like ever. No, ever. Really.
Like 45 to 65 games a year, that's not enough at all. Like, that's what you can pencil him in for. But they have some guys behind him. I believe they still have Austin Allen. He can hit a little bit. So they have the Mats at the corners. They have Olsen, who without the juiced ball, fell right back down to earth. He needs to figure out a few things to get back to his previous level. They have Chapman, who's coming back from hip labrum surgery, but Chapman's just such an incredible athlete that I think he'll still have a pretty good year. They got Ramon Laureano, who I really hope bounces back offensively because I love him defensively. The guy has a cannon of an arm. Cannon needs to bring his power back. Right now, it's just all walks and that. I guess it's decent, but it's not what I like. And then they got Piscotty in the corner, who's just like a power bat, kind of consistent. But yeah, it's one of those teams where day in, day out, you're not going to expect injuries. You're going to probably get 20 homers from about every spot, or at least close to. But they don't impress me really in any way. I like Chapman a lot. I like what Laureano could be. If Canna brings back the power, he's back in my good graces. But that might have only existed like in the juiced ball year. They just don't really strike me as a team that is truly dangerous. They strike me as a team that is a contender. I think the only thing that is going to boost them is that rotation because they have Sean Mania, who's like pretty darn good three. They got Luzardo, who could break out and be one of the ones in baseball. They got Puck, who could come in and he could do really good or start missing the strike zone and become an elite reliever. They have, I believe his name is, he used to be a Yankee. But they have Frankie Montas. That's another guy they have. They have Chris Bassett, who's a recently developed guy. That's the Yankee. They got James Caprillion. I was thinking, what's the guy? James what? It's not James Karinchak. James Karinchak is the guy with Cleveland who's a great reliever. They got James Caprillion. So they have a really good group of pitchers to work with. And I just think that because they're going to hit homers, because they're going to walk, because they are going to play decent defense, good defense, they're going to remain competitive with that pitching staff.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of the big thing to talk about with regards to Oakland. It's, watch Ramon Laureano, on defense, because that throwing arm is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Hope that Mark Canha hits for power. Hope that, Matt Chapman is fully recovered from his hip injury. And then hope that rotation can prevent enough runs so that all those home runs will get them enough wins over a full season. I mean, it's very much a Moneyball strategy, walks and power. In the recent years, that's been, what's added to that is certain levels of infield defense, as well as a preference for building good starting rotations, as far as starting rotations that induce weak contact. And that's kind of been the recent Moneyball formula. Like they've just added those two things onto, walks and power. But I think that's very result oriented. It's not very process oriented, approach oriented, if you will. So if you couldn't tell, I'm not super big on Oakland.
They're
kind of a boring team to me. Like I'm not going to tell you like they're a bad team or like they can't compete or anything like that. It's just that they are exceedingly boring.
I can tell how you feel. I mean, that was probably the tamest that you've ever been talking about a team.
It's like the tamest I feel about a team. I don't like this team a lot, and I don't hate this team a lot. They just kind of exist, Okay. Sorry.
I mean, no, I get it. So, what's funny is that as I said their name, I was like, is this a real team? Like, I doubted myself. I was like, because I looked up teams that we haven't talked about yet and everything. So, like, I have Oakland Athletics up, and I like looked at it, and I was like, is this a real team, or am I going to say this to him, and he's going to be like, dude, what are you talking about?
Boring. They're so boring. Like, my goodness, they're boring. So, give me another one.
So I'm going to give you another one.
Let's have a little bit of a better time here.
No, we're not going to have a better time because my next choice is another team that we haven't spoken about, which is the Rockies.
Oh, no. Oh, really?
I'm just throwing them at you.
Oh, man. So the Rockies, I thought that there was going to be something like really cool going for them here with like, maybe Arenado's gone. Okay, that's not fun, but maybe Tapia has a big year. Then I looked into Tapia and I'm like, yikes, it actually looks like a lot of what he did last year was luck driven. And then I was like, oh, well, Brendan Rodgers should be big league ready, And Brendan Rodgers, I've liked him for a while, but I kind of started souring on him at the end of 2019, I'm going to say, because he kept getting hurt. And I was like, oh, this is a little bit too close to the Tulowitzki comparison that people were making. Like he's producing shortstop, look at the actions, all that, but then the injuries, And I remember he was going to play like in the Arizona Fall League, and then he got hurt. And I was watching an Arizona Fall League game, and I remember I walked past him because he was sitting there in the stands. I was like, man, that's Brendan Rodgers, and he had the cast on and everything. But so I do have this, that story to go along with it. But like he's got great ability. But once again, like almost as soon as I started to get excited about it, he got hurt. So that's great. They got Trevor Story, who is one of my favorite players in baseball. So there's that. Blackman's only producing the results that he's doing because of the ballpark. If you look at his WRC plus, which weighs Park against things. He's not doing that great. So people who are big on Blackman, you have to understand within the context of Park relevance and the league how much he's actually hitting. But I love Story. Herman Marquez is kind of the perfect pitcher for their ballpark. Doesn't work well if you're pitching with spin in that ballpark, because if it gets redirected, the spin will just keep traveling. If you're a hitter who hits with spin, it works great in that ballpark. If you can't hit with spin, like LeMahieu, it doesn't work well in that ballpark. It's a big ballpark. If it hits with spin, it'll just keep going, But it is a big ballpark, a big outfield. That's why it also is a triples ballpark. But yeah, I'm big on Story, and Marquez is good. I hope that Bard, continues his rebound, if you will, his career resurgence. I don't have much else good to say about them. In my opinion, they're one of the 4 worst teams in baseball. I don't know what their front office is thinking half the time. And it's a shame because, I feel like people in Colorado are pretty passionate about baseball. That's pretty clear to me. So if I were them, I would find some sort of trade partner for Story, get as much as I could, and just rebuild, internationally draft, focus on doing great drafts in the normal draft. If anyone has a good year, trade them. I don't think that this team is anywhere near contention. They have to build from the ground up. But Story's great.
The story is great. I just don't want to talk about them anymore. I'm done.
Yeah, Trevor Story. Yeah, play him a short. Get him in your fantasy league. Do not pay attention to the Rockies outside of.
Yo, I can't. Okay, how about we lighten?
Let's lighten the mood a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Let's go with. I hope this lightens the mood. Let's go with the Pirates.
Oh man,
that's not a good reaction.
They have a very athletic team, athletic farm system, athleticness.
Do you want to make up 4 more words for athletic?
I mean, that's basically the compliment here. They do not really have pitchers in their system. They traded away Tyone, and they traded away Musgrove, and they got underwhelming, I think, returns would be the kind word to say there. They basically gave away Josh Bell. I love Brian Hayes, okay, who's Charlie Hayes' kid. He's not what he put up last year, but he is undoubtedly a good player. Not much else good to say about them. I mean, it's they're not a very good team. I love their closer. I got him in my fantasy league. I love him so much, Richard Rodriguez. But I mean, that's all, folks, as Bugs Bunny says, right?
That's all.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I can speak on that, if the shift didn't exist, now that Colin Moran is basically their first baseman, he could be something, but the shift does exist. I do not like what they have at catcher. They're still trying to figure out, they're up the middle. But I do like how athletic their farm system is. They have a bunch of guys who can hit a little bit for power, who can really run, who can play defense, and that's it goes across their system. Ji-Hwan Bae is, I believe, how you say his name. He's a middle infielder. I like him a lot. Travis Swaggerty, I like him a lot. Leo Verpiguero, he's also a middle infielder. I like him a lot. They have a lot of guys who should have well-rounded profiles. Figueroa's a lot like Gene Segura. Gene Segura. No, he's a lot like Gene Segura. So they do have some like good position player talent for in a few years when it's developed. And I do like the way that they're going about, at least seemingly, developing that talent where they're teaching them, focus on hitting, focus on, base running, focus on understanding the zone, and, focus on power last because, home runs are overall on mistake pitches.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's something that you can develop at the big league level. So if you're in the minors and you're crafting how to hit, all this other stuff, you see what I'm trying to say? I think that that's a much better use of your time when you're down there. But yeah, they've given away most of their talent. Richard Rodriguez and Hayes are the guys for that team. And I think that's basically it for them. So, man, we've been going over a whole bunch of teams that I just don't really dig too much.
What about the? You know what? I'm gonna throw you a bone here. How about the Mets? Let's go with the Mets.
All right. So the Mets, I don't like their defense. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And their base running is more interesting than exciting, if that makes sense. Although that could change with their use of their bench, depending on like how they use, Jonathan VR, how they use, Kevin Pillar. I mean, it's really the Illars that could bring, that added base running value that they'd need. But I don't like their defense, that's for sure. That being said, they have the offense of one of the best teams in baseball. They have, between lefty and righty balance in their lineup, a really great balance. That's something that's not really talked about a lot. They have a phenomenal rotation, at least, by the second half, it should really come together. They have a very deep bullpen, the kind of pen where it's very misunderstood. Like they have Edwin Diaz, but he's the closer. And outside of that, it's a whole bunch of guys who aren't necessarily, elite, but very good. You got Trevor May in there. You got Familia, who's eager to prove that he's still good. I think he's still good. They got Seth Lugo, who's going to be back from injury soon enough. They got a good collection of arms. They got a good collection of arms in the pen. I think it's probably the most underrated part about the Mets team, actually. Now that I think about it, is that it's that pen. People don't talk about that pen. And it's not necessarily that their pen is going to be so great in big games. It's not flashy like that. It's that it's going to be so consistent. And with how consistent they are going to be at hitting home runs, they're going to be one of the teams that hits the most home runs next year. That's going to accumulate a lot of wins over the full season for them. The key for them to win in the playoffs is they need that rotation to be kicking, so that they can use the pen judiciously and not have to worry about bringing in tired players who aren't great in big games. You need those guys all fresh and being used in the right situations. Like I think Trevor May is probably going to be their big game guy at that point in time. If they can have a workable pen in that kind of way, that's going to be really big for them in the playoffs. And then the other thing is, the lefty-righty balance of their lineup is going to be really huge for them in the playoffs. And, oh my God, if they make the World Series, you want to talk about a team that could really use DH. Because what ends up happening is you move Pete Alonso to DH. Dom Smith takes over first base, which improves your defense. And then you moved Brandon Nimmo to left field and put Pilar in center field, which improves your defense exponentially. And then you're working with an above average defensive squad as well. So it's all about getting to the World Series for them to be able to then have the defense working for them too. But that rotation could really work for them in the playoffs. It's just the approach of their players. It's a little bit too passive for my liking. works the count a little bit too much. I'd like, them to be able to hit a few more pitchers' pitches, but given the balance of their lineup in terms of, how each individual hitter does versus the handedness that they're going to be mainly utilized against, I think it kind of mitigates some of that. I'm not really big on a few of the types of hitters that they have. And then I think probably the biggest thing outside of those factors for them this year is that they're going to really need, a big year from Lindor, but a lot of people expect that. And they're going to need Conforto to show that his 2020 wasn't just like some sort of aberration, that his 2020 was like the real deal, middle of the order, full on breakout. This is who he is now type thing. If they have those working for them, all of those different factors working for them, they stand as good of a chance as basically any to win the World Series. But they need to get to the World Series to have the defense working for them, because until DH, they're not going to have the defense they need. So if they get, their worry isn't the regular season. Their worry isn't the World Series as much. I mean, of course, the World Series will worry because you're always facing an incredible team, but it eliminates their one weakness. Their worry is the division series, the championship series. If they can make it through those two series, they can make it through those 12 games. They're in a great position. This is the best Mets team that I've seen in years, but because, of course, they're the New York Mets, they're already seeing injuries. Carrasco, I believe, is now down for a little bit, and he's one of their key pitchers. So, and he's like, outside of when he got cancer, he's never been injured really in his whole career. So it's just like, Mets doing Mets things where like they give everybody legitimate hope, and then they crush everyone. They crush the dreams of everyone.
I think we had this conversation when we first got together to start this podcast, and I was like, my only experience with the Mets, it seems that they like just crush their fans' dreams all the time. It seems like that they just I don't understand what goes on.
I don't understand it, because here's the deal. Like, I go into the year and I'm like, yeah, this is like a really, really good team. And then undoubtedly, like every single year, people who like they had just gotten, who like never get injured, get injured. Like, it's just, I'm like, but why? Oh yeah, that's because they're the Mets. It doesn't make any sense, but it keeps happening. Now this year, I thought that they were fairly deep, so that they're fairly protected from it. But who knows? Because who knows?
I know this is like speculation, but do you think it has to do, because you're saying that many people get hurt? So like, do you think it has something to do with like the way that they train, or
they've switched that up enough times? It's similar.
It's not an excuse anymore.
Yeah, it's similar like to the situation with like my team, the Yankees, that like especially recently, like mad Yankees have been like getting hurt, like every year, every single year, and it's not making sense. Like, to what degree? Like, I understand. Okay, Judge is going to miss, about 30 games a season because he's 6'7". Stanton's past that point, so Stanton's probably going to miss about like 50 games a year, something like that. Something along those lines. Maybe 40 games, but like 40, 50 games. Luke Voigt just got hurt, so now I'm like, wait a second. Now he's getting hurt because he's had a couple of things the last few years. So now I'm like, okay, wait, we have to start worrying about his health. Andujar's now hurt. Torres started getting hurt last year. It's Sanchez, Sanchez, who never had injury issues really in the minors. Attitude issues, sure, but didn't have injury issues. Hicks, constantly hurt. I hope that Frazier doesn't start getting hurt now, So it's or Urshela, So anyway, how do we end up talking about the Yankees? We were talking about the Mets a second ago. So.
Because I think that you're so done with talking about
it's been two New York teams, and they're just constantly hurt, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because these teams should be doing good. These teams should be just dominating, and then it's just like, oh well, yep, that makes sense because everyone has to get hurt for no reason every year. No sarcasm there. That totally makes sense. So it's very frustrating, and Met fans, know it more than Yankee fans at this point, by a lot, because this is like their reality at this point. The Yankees, at least, we won in 2009.
So mean.
So,
you're like, at least the Mets are used to it.
Yeah, but like even then, though, I mean, like I don't want to be getting used to it.
Yeah, you don't want to. You don't want to. You want to see the team thrive and everything.
Yeah, like no, please, no, thank you. I don't want, do not, no. So anyway,
did we talk about?
No, I want to name like my real quick my favorite players on the Mets because I think that I just named a whole bunch of guys. I just named because they have a great roster, really deep, lots of talent. Now, I'm going to work my way around in no order, okay? I love Kevin Pillar because he's proven he can hit now. Not great, but he can hit a little bit. He can hit about league average, maybe a little bit above. It used to be like he was in the 80s or 90s WRC plus wise, and he's up that recently. And he's going to get regular playing time because their main three outfielders are all lefties. He's a righty. So I love the pickup. I think he's going to get, a full season of playing time. So it's like an extra everyday player, which is brilliant. Big Pilar guy. Also, he's one of the few players who can steal home and steal home runs. Does both like consistently enough for it to be a skill. I've not been the biggest on Nimmo, but if he keeps to being patient, that'll work. As a lefty, because of the amount of righties in the league and mistake pitches that you'll get over a full year, I think he'll hit for enough slugging. Not a big believer in his power. I also think that his batting average is not going to be too good moving forward. But I also think with the amount that he walks, that even with a normal amount of hits, even with normal doubles power, you're looking at an elevated on-base percentage. I don't like him. I just want to be clear. He's not my type of player in any way whatsoever, but he is one of their better players in the short term as used in a platoon. And anytime there's a lefty out there, you got to put Pilar out there in center field for him. You have to use him very selectively. You have to understand that because he doesn't have as much power or batting average, because the power specifically is going down, he's best used as somebody who gets on base to be driven in by better players. The walks are there, so he will be on base. That's how I feel about him. Not too huge on him. I don't like him, but if in the context that they're using him, he's one of their more dangerous guys. I think that's probably about as optimistically as I can speak on him. I just am not really a believer in him long term.
You're not a big fan. It's okay.
No.
That's all right.
A lot of people like Pete Alonso more than me. I think a lot of his
people
power
love Pete Alonso.
Oh yeah, Pete the polar bear.
Yeah,
fun to root on, sure.
Yeah.
But he very much seems to me as like a better version of Hoskins in Philly. More able to tap into that power just at free will. But nonetheless, a patient hitter who works the count to get to the power that he has, not because, he's such an amazing hitter, but a lot of the time because he's just a really strong guy. The reason they call him Pete the polar bear, he's very strong. I got to see him in the Arizona Fall League before his rookie season. And he struck me very much as a guy who's like, about 30% above league average, maybe 28% above league average. And then he came in was like 50% above league average. I really think that's because of how polished he is, how powerful he is, and the juiced ball year.
Mhm.
I don't think that he was like the 20% above league average that he was last year. I think he's better than that. But I don't think that he's this stud that a lot of people think. So he's another guy who's going to be good for them, but I want to specifically name that I'm not the biggest on him. But the reason why I'm naming him and Nimmo is because Nimmo is going to be a different type of hitter against righties. And Alonso is going to be a different type of hitter against lefties. And in the playoffs, that could be really effective in the same kind of way that Tampa Bay's lefty righty was effective. So if you're trying to figure out the bottom of your order for the playoffs, that's not a bad strategy to go with because they're giving you the production you need during the regular season and selectively the production that you may need in the playoffs.
Mhm.
Now, to get back on players that I do like, I love Jeff McNeil. I love his versatility. I love his contact bat. I love his base running, believe it or not. I love him as a player. Big fan of Jeff McNeil. That's another baseball guy, Sean pick. He liked him before me as well. Talking about a Sabre Scouts pick, I've loved Dom Smith for years. And before Dom Smith, really broke out, I was telling people how, gun to my head, I would have rather had Dom Smith than Pete Alonso, which a lot of people weren't really sitting too well with. And then Dom Smith did what he did. So huge fan of Dom Smith. Probably the best hitter in the Mets' entire lineup. You can take that to the bank. That's my word. Not a fan at all of J.D. Davis. I understand the people who like him. He's got patience. He's got power. Not a fan. I love.
At least
James
you're honest about it. You're like, he's a good player. I'm just not a fan.
Yeah. I mean, look, certain approaches, and certain positions, like third base is a position where I want to have a top talent at because it's a position where there's a lot of top talent. So going with a guy who's just good doesn't really pass the sniff test for me. So that's why J.D. Davis doesn't really work for me. So let's see. I love James McCann. I think that was one of their best moves this offseason. I think that he's been on an incline, getting better year to year for now some time. I'm just a big fan. Just a big fan. Conforto, if what he did last year was for real, then I'm a complete Conforto fan. I'm a believer now. But he's very much seemed to me like a lefty version of Pete Alonso. Power, patience, just enough to be really good, but not enough to be world-changing. About 28%, 30% above league average. I mean, if Nimmo has lost power, which I think he has, and you need a lefty complement for Alonso, there you go with Conforto. So, of course, so you also, you can have the righty Pilar with the lefty Nimmo in a platoon. So that can work in that way as well. But yeah, no, I think the best overall player, best hitter is Dom Smith. Best overall player on the Mets is Lindor. Second best overall player is McNeil. I'd put Dom Smith just because of his level of hitting in the top three for them. In terms of regular season value or fantasy baseball value, I understand people who really like Conforto or Alonso or, Nimmo, but looking at how many different options there are in the outfield, how many elite corner outfielders there in the outfield, ones who have a lot more specific skills or, versatility or base running or whatever. I mean, Conforto's he's a great player, but he's kind of also a boring player. He walks, he strikes out, he hits for homers, he doesn't make errors, he hits the cutoff man, he doesn't get hurt. I like going with guys who are a little bit more specific and dangerous. Like if a guy's going to be consistently healthy, hit the cutoff man, good defensively, like maybe if I can get that kind of power out of him, what if I could get more of an aggressive approach so he doesn't have to work the count to get to the same level of power, So there's enough outfielders there where, and Nimmo should be a corner outfielder, where they're good players. Both of those guys, Conforto and Nimmo, but I kind of, for me, it's a lot rarer to find a skill set like Kevin Pillar. And I think they're using him perfectly since they have a mainly lefty outfield. You don't really find guys who steal home regularly, and certainly not guys who can also rob homers. And if you have those two things going together with a profile that is an above league average hitter, and in consensus, at least above league average corner outfield defender, if not average center field defender, plus base runner in totality. I mean, I think he's a very underrated player, kind of across the league, because everybody likes their power and all that. But he's also doing this with an aggressive profile. If he had to work the count deeper, maybe he could get to more power. But he doesn't. That's not his approach. He's able to hit for some measure of power as is. I think he's just very underrated. But yeah, I think my favorites, not necessarily the best players, but my favorites on the team, Pillar because of his specific ability, Dom Smith because if you put him at first base, I mean, the defense would then be there. The offense is through the roof. I think he's the best hitter on that team. Jeff McNeil and Lindor, who up the middle, I mean, those are the two most well-rounded players on that team. And then James McCann also up the middle with them. So that's kind of funny how that works out. I mean, if Dom Smith was at first base, it would be first base, second base, catcher, and Pillar is mainly center field, at least historically. So those are all really key positions, but they don't have, a guy I really like at third. And it's very, Conforto and Nimmo are like Oakland A's players. They're just there. They're boring. They're good, but they're boring. Unless, of course, Conforto repeats what he did last year. But it's also important to remember that Conforto is a first half player historically. Last year was a 60-game season, so you got to see it over a full year. And it's a little bit more, I'm a little more skeptical under those conditions. So that's how I feel about their hitting. Significantly more players that I like than the other teams that we've discussed. And as far as their pitching, their bullpen I like, but there's nobody I'm obsessed with. Their rotation, as soon as Syndergaard gets healthy, it's Tommy John, no biggie. All about him. DeGrom is the best pitcher in baseball. I believe he's throwing 102 in spring training now. Carrasco, when he's healthy, I love him. And Stroman as well. I know Stroman talks a big game, and I know there's a lot of Yankee fans that don't like him because he speaks against the Yankees. I don't know if I'd say against the Yankees, but he's not afraid to stir the rivalry, so to speak.
I was about to say stir the pot and everything and get everyone upset.
And I'll be real with you. Ever since Granderson kind of moved on, I've been waiting for someone on the Mets to take that step. So I don't really mind this coming from Stroman as much as a lot of other fans do, because I think it stokes the rivalry again. And honestly, I don't even think that Stroman's that I know he'll publicly say that I'd never play for the Yankees. I don't believe that for a second. I think if he got the opportunity after playing a few years,
probably jump.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's made for New York. He's made for the spotlight. He's a great player. A lot of people were upset at the Yankees when they didn't get him, but I think that we were focusing on other things at that point in time. It didn't make sense diverting our interest, even if he was a really good player, is a really good fit also. Not just player, but a good fit for the team. But one of the things that I think is the most important to remember about Stroman is that Stroman is a pitcher's pitcher. He's not a guy who's going to, I get my outs by the strikeout. He knows that he can go more innings, and he is an innings eater despite the fact that he's so short. He knows he can go more innings by inducing weak contact regularly and limiting walks. And that's what he does. Ground balls all day, constantly. So if you have a really good infield defense behind him, he's going to have incredible seasons. So I'm hoping that Lindor can, get McNeil's defense back to where it was when, he was in the minors, the second baseman. And I'm really hoping that, Alonso please have a good year at first, because outside of that, it's not going to be very fun for Stroman. to pitch in front of that defense because JD Davis is not a good defender. That's a problem over there. So, be that as it may, they have 4 starters that are really, really good. And then, that position player group, and then a pen that's, more deep than, spiky, if you will. And that's the Mets. I mean, they're one of the teams that has a legitimate shot at winning the World Series. I mean, there were rumors that they were trying to get either Eugenio Suarez to take over for JD Davis at third base, which that works, or that they were trying to get Chris Bryant from the Cubs, but I think the Cubs are going to try to win the division. But there are guys that they can go out and potentially deal for who could fix their third base situation. I mean, even if they wanted to do something like they go get, Kyle Seager from the Mariners and platoon him with JD Davis, that could work too. So there's a lot of outs for this situation. It's just I don't like the defense of the squad. I don't like players who are majority patience types like most of their roster. But they do have a great balance, and if they can get more consistent defense, kind of good to go. So very high praise for the Mets, obviously. Very, very high praise.
Now, I want to take a step into a team that we've barely talked about as well. And it's going to be the Tigers. No, I'm joking. Let's talk about the Angels. Yeah.
You saw me, right? Like, I was like, oh, no. Oh, no. Okay, so the Angels this is the most exciting Angels team that I've seen in a while. I think we've done a couple podcasts on it.
We have.
So I'm gonna touch very briefly on these guys, and then we can go to the next team too. I love
Then
Ohtani.
we can talk about the Tigers.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
I'm joking.
Get them out of the way. Goodness. But oh snap. Okay, so here's the deal. Iglesias, Fletcher, Rendon, Ohtani, Upton, Trout, Dylan Bundy, not Ted Bundy, Dylan Bundy, and Raisel Iglesias. That is the best of their squad. But that doesn't mean that they don't have lots of other guys who should be some measure of very good. Kurt Suzuki, Dex Fowler, Jared Walsh, Andrew Heaney, Griffin Canning, Alex Cobb. When Quintana moves to the pen, inevitably. I like their squad. I don't love their squad. They need more pitching, very clearly. But it's the best of that division. And I haven't been able to say that about an Angels team in a very long time. And I also think that there's a very high chance that the offense is a top 3 offense by the end of the season, which is a very hot take, which is perfect,
He said it.
Here we are. It's a very, very hot take. Because when I went across their roster, I compared it with most other teams, and I was going to say the Dodgers could kind of keep pace with it, but now in the NL there's no DH, so it's that compared to Ohtani, and that is too big. That is too big of a gap, assuming Ohtani's healthy. When you're looking at all the other positions, I'm not a big Max Muncy fan. I think that Jared Walsh has a really big year against just righties at minimum, at least. The league doesn't really know him too well, and he's killed it in the minors. Lefties, which he's not going to do that well against, Pujols will do well against. That platoon should work out pretty well. Comparing Fletcher to I mean, just the point is that this Angels team is you'd be comparing. Look, you're comparing Fletcher to basically Gavin Lux, I believe, is going to be the second baseman majority for the Dodgers. Now Lux has put up great numbers in the minors, but he did it with a juiced ball, and his numbers haven't been the same since, or even before that point. Like he has not as good minor league numbers as his reputation. Like the minor league number, the year he went off was 2019. It was the juiced ball year. And I believe he had a pretty good AA as well, was it? Which I believe was without the juiced ball, sure. So I do give him credit there, but just because you have a period of time in 1 year where you do really, really well doesn't mean all of a sudden, you're going to be one of the best in the league at your position. And I think that there's a high chance that Chris Taylor ends up taking over the spot from him by the time the season's over. Like Chris Taylor, I like him so much. He's on my fantasy league. He's on my team. I got him in the draft. Like I did my fantasy draft yesterday. So he's in my mix right now. He's kind of like my super utility player if something goes wrong anywhere. I'm also going to kind of play him all over. But Chris Taylor, he if you're putting him up against Fletcher, then I can understand, giving that one to the Dodgers, sure. And I can also understand, Seager over Iglesias as well. But I think Rendon has the hand at this point up over Justin Turner, as good as Justin Turner is. And I think that, you go to the outfield, I think the best outfielder that either team has, Trout, Betts. Trout's better than Betts. Bellinger has to prove that, he can rebound and come back to himself. If he can, he's better than Upton for sure. But Upton's still a really good player. He's going to be rebounding as well. And then you have Pollock versus Fowler. I think that Pollock's better there too. But then when you add in the fact that like Muncy, I don't think that Muncy hits. Mm-hmm. I don't think that Lux hits. Before. So, yeah. I think that what you're dealing with is a disparity at the bottom of the lineup. I think that Ohtani versus the pitcher is going to really equalize this. Actually, you know what? I like to try and be as objective as I can. I think that the offense actually is pretty balanced, even with the pitcher batting between those two teams. I think it's the base running that makes up the difference. Mm-hmm. I think I like the base running of the Angels a little bit better than the base running of the Dodgers. So even then, like if we want to say that, just hitting wise, the Dodgers, are as good or even a little bit better than the Angels, I mean, add in the base running. So look, if you're, if you want to just, divide hairs, if you will, you want to say the Dodgers are then better. Well, you also have to remember that, another top three team just lost a major hitter in Eloy Jimenez, leaving the Chicago Cubs and being replaced by Adam Engel, who can't really hit. So, and, you have Adam Eaton, who's now getting injured again. You have to worry about his injury risk. So, if the Angels aren't a top three offense, they're on the borderline. They're right on the edge. So they're definitely top five offense. But they may be a top three offense. It depends. I mean, it's very, very close because the White Sox without Eloy, that's quite the blow. I mean, he's an aggressive middle of the order hitter, going to hit 35 bombs, 30% above league average. I mean, that's a huge blow because you're dropping from that to a guy who's probably going to be about 5% below league average, maybe 10% below league average. So that knocks the White Sox down a bit too. So, but the Angels are right. Yeah, they're right there. They're right there with those teams, in my opinion, offensively. And yeah, I don't have anything else to say. They have a collection of really good players. They need help with pitching.
You can always tell when you love a team because you kind of like glow up and you like sit up straight. You're like, so let me tell you about this. And there you go. There goes your
Shohei Ohtani hat. My Ohtani hat. with his number. Where's that?
Other side,
this
other side.
There we go. Yeah. Yeah, there we go. Much better.
It's a really nice hat.
And while we're on the Angels, real quick, I'll also show my most prized possession.
Oh yeah, you showed me this earlier.
Yeah. Oof, there we go.
You can definitely tell that you're an Angels fan. You can definitely tell.
I'm a Yankees fan, but
Mike Trout be both.
Mike Trout is basically he's basically God, he's the current version of Babe Ruth, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those situations where it's like, I like Ohtani a lot. I like him unreasonably too. I have a Ohtani bobblehead, so maybe I should say like they're my second team or whatever. But like, I grew up with the Yankees, so I can't ever move on from being a Yankee fan, especially right now. This is like one of the most exciting times to be a Yankee fan ever. So,
is that a segue into telling me about the Yankees or talking about breaking down the Yankees team?
The best of the Yankees are Chapman in the bullpen. I think Sanchez has a huge year. Luke Voigt was going to have a big year, but now he's hurt, so that's great. I'm a big Judge guy. I think, you don't usually have that level of power and that level of patience with that level of zone coverage. But he's so huge that he gives you that. I love Hicks, switch hitter, base running, patience, power. I mean, it doesn't really matter as much to me that he's not hitting for batting average because he's majority batting lefty in an era with the shift. It's going to be hard for him to do that. But he's walking, he's getting on base, he's hitting for power, and he's so fast that the amount of time he's on base, it's really beneficial to him. It's helped him out, like immensely. I'm a big Gio Urshela guy. I'm a massive Clint Frazier guy. LeMahieu almost won the MVP. It's just they have the number one hitting team in baseball. A lot of people are bigger on Gleyber Torres than I am, but even I admit he's a phenom. So, like, their starting nine is as good as it gets. I even really, really like Brett Gardner. I think that there's a misconception that he's done because he's a hot and cold player, and the season was really short last year. And at the very end, in the last month of the season, he started heating up like he usually does. And it was like 1 month versus 2 months of not being hot. So his total line didn't really look that great. But yeah, I think that, he's still the same guy. But outside of like those 10 position players that I just named, I don't think they really have much else. Like Andujar's hurt, so that's why I don't name him. And like I'm starting to lose faith in him because it's a wrist injury, which robs contact ability, and that's one of his key skills. And then one of his other key skills was that he could hit for power, which he had shoulder surgery, and that robs you of your ability to hit for power. So, and he can't play defense. They tried him even at first base, and he's terrible at first base as well. He's only looked decent as a corner outfielder, and we have so many of those. So it's one of those things where it's like, I want to like him because of what he did his rookie year, but it's just more and more evidence not to. Trade
a lot of injuries going on. A lot of injuries.
Yankees and Mets, man.
I'm like,
what I do like though, and this is different from most previous years, is that the Yankees finally have starting pitching. Like we got Chapman in the bullpen. He's our closer. And I like O'Day a lot. I think O'Day, if he's, ready for a full season, if he can pitch a full year, he could be really good for us. I like Zach Britton a lot. But he's hurt. He'll be back in August. I think those three are right now the best of the pen. But the cool thing is that the pen's going to be getting better as the year goes on because they're going to be bumping starters to it as guys come up. So right now, if we're looking at all the starters that the Yankees have that are above average, they got Cole, who's a top 3 arm.
Mm-hmm.
They got Tyone and Kluber, who are both coming back from injuries, but they look incredible in spring training. They got Severino, who's coming back from Tommy John. Same injury that Syndergaard is. Don't know why we'd look at it differently. He's looking incredible already, so he might be back earlier than expected.
That's good.
They have Jordan Montgomery, who's looking better than ever. I know some people who are so impressed by him that they think he's going to be like ace-like this year. I don't quite think so, but this is somebody who knows pitching, so like better than I think I know pitching. Then you got Domingo Germán, another guy going absolutely off. I think Cashman said that he's basically like a number 2 starter, which is very high praise, and I trust Cashman because Cashman knows his ball. Then they got Davy Garcia, they got Clark Schmidt, they got Luis Medina, and Boone said Medina's even going to get starts this year at some point. And Davy Garcia, people compare him to Stroman, and Clark Schmidt, I like to compare him to like a Lance Lynn type, somebody who's going to go about 180, 190, 200 innings a year, somebody who's going to pitch to like a 2.7 all the way down to like a 3.2 ERA, somewhere in there. Just go a lot of innings. And then Medina is one of the best arms that I've ever seen. There's a video from Fangraphs on YouTube of him doing basically a full start from back in December. And it was his winter league, as in this year. So you get to see what he looks like now. And he looks like a combination of Severino and Luis Castillo and Stroman all wrapped up into one. He looks, throwing like 100 miles an hour. Like apparently at some point in summer camp last year, he threw like 102 miles an hour, and he's a starter.
That's really fast.
Yeah, he's a starter.
Fast.
So that's an ace candidate right there. Not just because he can throw fast, but he has the pitch mix and control and command and athleticism, all the things that you would need to say that someone could be an ace. So for once, it's not like, the Yankees have pitching. It's, Betances, Benuelos, and Brackman. Well, Brackman was coming back from Tommy John. He never got healthy. Nothing happened. Like when people were big on Brackman, it was right after we drafted him. He had not done anything. We drafted him hurt. We were banking on a rebound that never happened. Okay? Betances, we liked him because he could throw hard and he was tall and he was lighting up the low minors, but that's not really enough to be too big on a guy. He lost the strike zone at the high minors. Benuelos was doing great, but he's a smaller guy, and when he ended up getting Tommy John, which a lot of pitchers do, he ended up losing his velocity and a little bit of his control and command, funny enough. Control and command never came back. The velocity has started to slowly over time. I think his days of being a starting, pitcher in general are done. It's a reliever now. Betances became a reliever. We look over to when the Yankees had Jabba, when the Yankees had Ian Kennedy, and when the Yankees had Phil Hughes. Those guys were great, right? But they rushed Jabba. He got hurt. Phil Hughes, they rushed. He got hurt. Kennedy, they didn't really rush, but he had some sort of muscle aneurysm type thing in his shoulder. Forget what it was. It was really rough on him, and he ended up rebounding. But because he was more of a 3-starter, 4-starter, he at that point at least he wasn't really needed for the Yankees. So they sent him to the NL, and he had a couple real good years for the Diamondbacks. Now Kennedy's a reliever, but the Yankees never had a collection of guys who had done well at the high minors, who weren't rushed, who, weren't like 2-pitch pitchers, trying to learn a third or whatever, like not, relievers, so you're turning into starters. Like we now have a collection of guys where they're all talented. They're all like 4-pitch pitchers, And then here's where it gets crazy, right? We had this guy, Michael King, behind all of those arms. And last year, King was throwing like 93, 94, reports of maybe hitting 95 or 96 at times. And, this spring, he's already throwing 97, 98. So that changes things. If you're a starter and you go from throwing between 92 and touching 95, 96 at your best to coming into spring training throwing 97, 98, that changes your entire outlook. So if he can maintain that as the year goes on and learn to throw that off his other pitches, to highlight those other pitches, to make those other pitches play up, he was going to look like a number 3 or number 4 starter. Now he might be looking a lot better than that. Just got to give him time to get used to his stuff, because he's still pitching, off of his breaking balls, his changeup, those types of things. Once he knows he can really, just crank fastballs in there and then use that to off balance the other pitches, everything else will play up. So, big fan of what the Yankees are doing. I think that, if we're looking at a team that has probably the best chance of being in the World Series in the American League, it's the Yankees. I think the last time we did any sort of recording, I said it was the White Sox, but that was before they lost Eloy Jimenez for the whole season. Now it's the Yankees. And, I was prepared to go into the year just being like, I know my team's not the best in the American League, like just openly, acknowledging it. I have a good team. I'm going to enjoy watching a good team, but without Eloy, I think it's pretty evident. They're going to have to go in with Adam Engel in their lineup every day. And the Yankees don't have to do that. The Yankees can go with a 1 through 9 the whole year, as in every single guy is a middle of the order hitter. Engel's not anywhere close to that. I think they're pretty exposed in the outfield. And I also think they're pretty exposed at backup catcher. Like they granted Jonathan Lucroy his release. I think last time we were recording, we were like, oh, Lucroy's going to be the backup. Yeah, that makes sense because he can actually play
exactly
defense.
What you said.
Yeah. I was like, oh, okay, well then that makes sense. Well, they granted Lucroy his release, which means the backup's either Zach Collins or Yerman Mercedes. Now, neither of them I like, except I like Yerman Mercedes, but I like him as like a first baseman or a DH because he can hit. But I don't like Zach Collins as a hitter. I barely like him as a defender. And I don't like Yerman Mercedes as a defender at all. It's a bad situation. Like run away from that. So yeah, I think that now things have changed. I also even think that the Twins now have a shot at winning that division if everything works in their favor. But it's going to be really tough. It's going to be it's like an uphill battle, kind of thing. It's a a dogfight almost. And not like what's that guy who got arrested for doing actual dog fighting? No, I mean like fighting.
Oh, I forget his name. I know who you're talking about. I totally forget his
dog
name.
fighting as in fighter jets. Don't get too sensitive here.
Yeah.
But I think at this point in time, Yankees are probably going to be the best in the American League. It's anyone who is hurt, like Britton, it's a pretty big deal if Britton was out the whole year, but he'll be back by August. I was worried, that Dietrich, however you say his name, and Chirinos were going to be completely let go because they were released from their contracts, but they re-upped them on minor league deals. So they're going to be in AAA or the alternate site or whatever they're doing until they're basically needed. And the reason why that's particularly exciting is because Sanchez does have an injury history. And it's particularly exciting because I don't like Jay Bruce. I think Jay Bruce is extraordinarily limited. I think, if you're in an era where, home runs are hit on mistake pitches and your only skill is that you're left-handed and you hit a lot of home runs against specifically righties,
Mm-hmm.
then you are an extraordinarily limited player. And, that is what Bruce is. On the other hand, yes, I understand that Dietrich is a 3 true outcomes type. He's not going to hit for any sort of batting average, but he also walks more than Bruce as a 3 true outcomes type, meaning he's going to get on base more for everybody else to drive in. So he's not just dependent on home runs. He can also be on base for other people to get the job done. And then also, the guy can play second, first, third, left field, and right field. So Bruce can play left field, right field, first base. He can't play third, can't play second.
Mm.
And I don't even know if I would trust Bruce in a corner, even though he can play it. Like, to me, Bruce is like a platoon DH. And I don't have any value for those types of guys if you only can hit for power. Like, he has no on-base percentage. He has no batting average. So, I know a lot of people who do like Bruce, and I never necessarily root for someone to fail, but I will be really excited when the roster is upgraded. And Dietrich has his spot. And also, I don't think Kyle Higashioka can hit. I think last year was just, lefties didn't know him. The league didn't know him. And when the league doesn't know you, you'll get enough mistake pitches thrown to you that if you're, a 6-year AAA veteran like he was, you'll hit for power. But he got no on-base ability. He's got no batting average ability. And I think once he starts getting pitched too tougher, he stops getting mistakes. There goes the power. So I think Chirinos will take over for him as well. So I do see, though, this is an opportunity for Higashioka and Bruce to prove people wrong. But I'm just glad they're getting this out of the way at the beginning of the season. So I think the best thing that the Yankees could do for their team, though, would be to get somebody like Chris Taylor, somebody who, like Jerkson Profar, somebody who you can put it at any spot on the roster if someone gets hurt, and they'll step in and be an above average player. It's part of the reason why I liked Chirinos so much, because if something happens to Sanchez again, I'm not comfortable going with Higashioka every day. That's not a good situation. Not even comfortable with Higashioka that much as a backup catcher. So that's the Yankees. I think they're in a really good position.
So now I want to talk about my personal favorite team in the entire world.
Oh,
silence. Oh boy, what is Chris gonna do? What is he?
Go ahead. Is this sarcastic, your favorite team, or your actual?
Always sarcastic. I told you that when I was.
No. Oh boy.
I told you when I was heavy, not heavy, but when I had a lot of friends that watch baseball, I told you that my team of choice was the Cubs.
Yeah.
But we've talked about the Cubs. We've mentioned the Cubs several times, so I'm sarcastically saying, "Oh, let's talk about my favorite team."
Yeah.
In the entire world. Let's talk about the Rangers.
The Rangers. Okay, let's talk about the Rangers.
Were you? You look like you were sweating there. You were.
I was just waiting. The Rangers are a mess of an organization.
Oh, not just the team, just the whole organization.
Yeah, they're a mess of an organization. One of the worst in baseball. I think it's pretty clear as well. Right up there with the Rockies, right up there with the Orioles, right up there with the Rockies, Orioles, Pirates, Tigers. I mean, like, those are all,
Yeah, we got the fill in on the Tigers. That whole episode you did on the Tigers, you were upset.
They're awful. They're terrible. But yeah, no, I very much see the Rangers as one of those teams. It's like, where they could, go and develop Odor, send him back down to the minors to work on things, when they could have. But no, let's just keep him up. And then, when he's not doing what we wanted him to do, because we rushed him and we stunted his development. Oh, now we're going to release him. They just released him, you know? We have Elvis Andrus, right? So instead of, getting some lineup protection, you don't even need much lineup protection. Just get him some. You haven't given any lineup protection to this team in years, okay? Go give lineup protection to Elvis Andrus. Then he'll have a decent year, and then you can actually, trade him for more than, strikeout K Chris Davis. Both the Chris Davis strike out a lot, but I'm not a fan of either of them. This is Chris Davis with a K, not Chris Davis with a C. They traded Andrus for him. I'm like, dude, if you just want to get a DH, just buy one. Don't trade your shortstop who could be decent if you get him lineup protection. But they're going to do what they're going to do. They've kept guys who are like gamers, I guess, on their roster. Like Solak is a gamer. I like him. He's decent. Brock Holt is a gamer, but that's all they really got, they have Gallo, but Gallo strikes out, ungodly amounts. And in an era with the shift, he's a lefty. He hits into double plays because of the shift. It's a mess of an organization. They don't even have much of a farm system. I don't have their opening day starter, my dude, is Kyle Gibson. Need I say more? That's a mess.
No.
That's a total mess. So, I want to be like, oh, the Rangers, they have so and so. The Rangers have, but there's not a guy on that roster who I like. And that might be unique because there's I guess one guy to be noted, even in the farm system with almost any team. But there really isn't. I'll just double check because I'm basically 99% sure. But I'm gonna double check here while we're here. I'm pulling up the Rangers roster.
While we're here, you might as well. It's like,
yeah, I'd be shocked if I'm wrong about this, but there isn't a single player between the majors and the minors that I like in this organization. And that's what, let's see. Okay, so Solak, Gallo, Davis, Dahl, Willie Calhoun, Odor got released, Lowe, Kiner Falefa, Tejada. Yeah, no position players. And Dunning's I guess. They traded for Dunning last year. He's a pitcher. Hope they don't mess him up. But that's it. I don't even know if I'm that big on Dunning. I'm just trying to give him.
You're trying to pick someone. You're trying to pick something
yeah. That's their 40. That's from their 40 man. If I'm going, Rangers top prospects, top 30 prospects or whatever. I don't think there's even one in there. Let me double check.
When you check things, it's bad.
Not one. There's not one. Yeah, there's not a single player in the Rangers organization, unless I'm being kind and being Dave Dunning's right. Dave Dunning's pretty decent. It's bad. That's really bad. Honestly, I didn't know how bad the Rangers situation was until I just realized that. Because even the Tigers have a couple of guys, in their farms. So they got Torkelson, they got Candelario. They got, if you give lineup protection to Miggy, he probably has a dead cat bounce year. They brought in Grossman, who's kind of solid piece, decent, and then they have all those pitchers, Mize and Scooble, but Manning, but I don't think outside of Dunning there's anyone. It's a really rough situation. So, yikes.
I feel like the theme is either you have like a really good roster and you spent this time building up either a really good team or a team that with practice is going to be not decent but really good, or you just like have an abysmal like team setup and it's just like how do you continue to exist?
Well, there's like 4 or 5 teams that are just that abysmal, and we've kind of named most of them and gone over most of them.
And that's why I've liked about this episode that you put me in control, and I was like, you know what? Let's talk about the teams that we haven't spoken about and just get that out the way.
Yeah, it's really interesting because like if we're looking at the league, right? Overall, the league is a very intelligent. It's the major leagues, it's very intelligent, you know. But there are some teams that they just don't seem to try or want to keep pace, or and it just you have to be real about it. The Rangers are probably going to finish last. I want to say probably. They're going to finish last. They're going to finish last. Okay. Tigers are going to finish last. I criticize their organization because they have basically a couple of hitters in their farm system, Green, Torkelson, and they have a couple of hitters at the big league level, Candelario and Miggy. And then they have those 3 pitchers, those main 3 pitchers, right? And that's it. The farm system is barren without that. The rest of the big league squad is kind of there. I like Jonathan Scope. That's another guy that they have that's good. I like Jonathan Scope, but they have no catcher. They have no shortstop. They're just the outfield's a mess. I believe third base is also a mess. I mean, it's a really rough organization, especially one that doesn't have that many great prospects. It's got 5 prospects in it that are above average. So, Baltimore, they don't really like to shop on the international market, although apparently they're starting to do it again. So that's good to see, especially with as good of a draft that they had last year. So maybe Baltimore will start to turn it around over the next few years. But they're so far behind the 8 ball with regards to that kind of thing. Their system is not anywhere close to where they want it to be. The Pirates in recent trades have not come out well. And, this is an organization that went from like 1992 for the next like 17 years on without having a winning season. Then they had like 4 winning seasons or 3 winning seasons, and then they went right back to losing. So I can't really give them too much credit. And then, the Rockies, we named them. So, those are abysmal teams and teams that they don't really have an excuse in our era. At least Baltimore is starting to turn things around with their international and local, national, if you will, signings on the internet, like on the amateur level, rather. So yeah, that's how I feel about those. Give me another one. We got to do at least one more good one.
No, we can do one more good one. Let's do
Tony did. Yeah.
I was gonna say your arch nemesis, but I'm not gonna do it.
Man.
Let's we've actually, it's really funny. We've danced around the idea. So anyone watching, and I've seen the eye ticker go up a couple times. It goes down, it goes up, it goes down, it goes up. People are joining, people leave, people join. So anyone that's joining in, anyone that's watching right now, it's like we've been jumping around this whole concept of James has this arch nemesis team that he just it's the team that shall not be named. It's the team that shall not be named.
We'll talk about them at some point. I mean, it's a thing. It's a thing.
It's a thing. It's a thing. How about choose actually Braves or Red Sox?
No, it's up to you, dude.
Okay, Braves. Let's go Braves.
All right, so Braves. A lot depends on either the health of Travis d'Arnaud or what their young players do. Because they're in a pretty good position with regards to base running, with regards to defense, with regards to overall roster health, with regards to starting pitching, with regards to depth of the bullpen and guys you can move to the bullpen so it develops over the year. They're good with lefty-righty balance. They're good with a lot. But they need a few of their hitters to break out. They need Austin Riley to break out. I'm a big fan of him. I think he will.
Mm-hmm.
They need Christian Pache to break out, or at least if he'll hit lefties. I don't know if they're okay with this, but it's an interesting idea to get elite base running, elite defense, and good enough offense out of center field across the board, while slowly integrating Christian Pache is if you platoon him with Inciarte. Inciarte's a lefty, he's a righty. So it would work perfectly, and I do think Pache's moved a little quickly. So I think that's probably a better way of slowly introducing him, especially if by the end of the season Pache's now hitting, and Inciarte can then be the fourth outfielder. I think you want to introduce him slowly, especially against handedness that he can hit lefties. Acuna's a beast, Freeman's a beast, Ozuna's a beast.
Mm-hmm.
If something goes wrong with the health of Travis d'Arnaud, which it almost always does, you're going to need Shea Langeliers, like him.
Langeliers, I think.
You're going to need him or Wilson Contreras' younger brother, William Contreras, to step up at catcher. So that's a worry, but d'Arnaud, when he plays, is a really great catcher. He's a top 10 catcher. So they need Riley to do well. They need him to do well. They need Pache to figure out his way and then to integrate him properly. I want to see Albies get better with his left-handed swing.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to see Swanson hit at the level he hit last year, but over a full season. If those things happen, they're going to give the Mets a run for their money with the division, because they may not have as much power as the Mets. They may not get on base as much as the Mets. They may not have the bullpen that the Mets have. The rotations are similar, but the Braves are going to have their rotation the whole year, and the Mets are going to have their whole rotation most of the year. In fact, I might even give the advantage to the Mets rotation, but it's kind of a wash overall.
Mm-hmm.
The big advantages that the Braves have on the Mets is defensive and base running. But if they can get d'Arnaud to be healthy, and if they can get a big year out of Pache, or at least platoon them to get the kind of production they need, and a big year out of Riley, then I think the Braves could be right there with the Mets, if not, overtake them for first place. I don't think that there's a lot of weaknesses with this Braves club. I think kind of across the board, they're in a really great position. And then when the DH does come to the National League, Ozuna gets to move over there. And I think by that time, Drew Waters should be ready. If not, they'll just sign someone. Mm-hmm. So I do think that the Braves have been working on this team for quite some time to build a team that isn't expensive, that is above average at basically everything: base running, defense, power hitting, everything you'd need. They need some young guys to take that next step this year. I think that's my biggest takeaway from this team. And you don't usually see teams that are as good as them, that are as complete as them. I guess the last thing I'll say is that I think that their bullpen needs a little bit upgrading. Mm-hmm. But I think it can develop over the year, because they have a lot of guys in the rotation that are going to get moved to the bullpen, or like former rotation candidates that are moving to the bullpen. The best players on the Braves, I like d'Arnaud a lot, but I have different usages for him. Like if it was my team, what I would be doing with d'Arnaud is, he'd do some backup catching when my regular catcher was tired, but he'd also back up first base when he wasn't doing that. And when he wasn't doing either of those, he'd be my DH. And that's how I would get him a full season of playing time and keep him rested. You need that bat in the lineup, but every day at catcher, he's going to get hurt at some point. Freddie Freeman's a monster, is what it is. I'm a big fan of Riley. Austin Riley, he just really impresses me. I love the swing. He cut down on his swing and miss last year. Ozuna's on my fantasy team. I love him. I don't think anyone
You
can.
love Ozuna.
Oh yeah,
You're always talking about Ozuna.
I love him, but I don't love him because like he's always been my guy. I love him because I look at what he did, and I'm like, man, if he can do it, Sanchez can easily do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the same thing. It's the same adjustment. But Acuna, Ozuna, Freeman, Riley, Darno. Those are the big pieces of this team.
Mm-hmm.
But Albies and Swanson, in my opinion, can join them this year if Albies gets better from the left side, and B, if Swanson just continues the level of hitting he did last year. Because I think that Swanson right now is one of the better base runners in the game as well, per BSR. Like he led the majors in that last year, even in the short sample size. That's not nothing. So with the kind of base running that he could exhibit, if he's hitting at that kind of level, I really like the profile. So they do have a really strong group of position players. They just have some very real worries. Real worries. And as far as their pitching staff, I like Charlie Morton. I like Max Fried. I'm optimistic about Drew Smiley. Ian Anderson's very good. I still think he needs to go through a couple of things, growth periods. He needs to go through that period of time where he's striking out a lot of guys and he's getting hit a little hard, but only when people make contact. And I think that if he makes this adjustment to be able to pound the zone more, he could take that next step. I'm not as big on Soroka. Mm-hmm. That's a very bad injury that he's coming back from. If he can prove to be, the guy he was, great, but it's a really rough injury. You're trying to come back and, step on first base and he gets his ankle completely turned. Like as in the guy steps on his ankle and his foot goes at I can't watch the video, man. I've watched it's disgusting. But they do have, a good other 4 guys in that rotation. Yeah, that's about my summary on the Braves. They have a very good team. Give me another one. We got time.
I know. We can do another one. Let's see.
Do the Red Sox?
Drum roll. Red Sox, go.
Yeah, because we were just there,
We were just talking about it.
I think Red Sox are one of the more underrated teams in the big leagues. I think across their rotation, it's basically number 3 starters. Evaldi's now throwing 100 miles an hour in spring training, so he might be more than that. Erod, is Erod. He, people have been saying, no, he's a 2-starter, not a 3-starter. Some years he shows it. So maybe that's what he is. Maybe he's a top of the line, 3-starter or a 2-starter. You got Garrett Richards, who before Tommy John, last time he was healthy, before he injured his elbow ligament, he was basically an ace. You have Nick Pivetta, who, he strikes out about 4 times, 5 times the amount of he walks. So, next adjustment is, being able to be effective in the zone. That's going to lower your ERA. And those are like the main 4 pitchers that they have. And they have Martin Perez behind him, who's eager to prove he can still be an effective starter. But Perez also would make a really good reliever. And, some people were telling me that Sale's going to be back before the end of the season. And if that's the case, I mean, goodness gracious, that could really be an effective rotation. They have a good bullpen. It's not like a great bullpen. I think the part that I like the most about the Red Sox is that lineup. We got Vasquez, who gives you enough offensively. He's a hot and cold player too, so when he is hitting, it really gets you those wins. Because he'll be hitting consistently for predictable periods of time, and you can put him in the right lineup spots. So he starts off cold, then he gets hot as the season goes on. Plus, he's about as good as they get defensively at the position. You got Xander Bogaerts, who can play shortstop, but he's also one of the best offensive players at the position, consistently like 30% above league average. Can run the bases really well. Devers is eager to prove that he can still hit. I think he really started to do it in the second half of last year. I think that's just going to carry over. I think he's an utter masher. So that's another middle of the order hitter. At DH, they have JD Martinez. Still JD Mart, without the juiced ball, with the kind of swing that he had a down year, but that doesn't mean he's done. I think it'd be incredibly stupid to think that, or at least incredibly ignorant, possibly willfully ignorant, biased. In center field, you got Verdugo, who's a great player in his own right. You got Hunter Renfroe in one corner, who is a perfect fit for that ballpark. Everything he hits, he pulls, and he's got exceeding amounts of power, and he's got a hell of an outfield arm. So literally perfect fit for their team. At second base, they have Kike Hernandez, but it's not like they're batting him seventh or whatever. He's their leadoff type, so he's forced to now be more patient, which is when he's more patient, he's an above-average hitter. It's when he gets aggressive, like overly aggressive, that he falls into problems. And his swing, because he pulls everything, is perfect for that ballpark. So he'll hit for a little bit extra power, too. And he gets on base for everybody else to drive in. So that works really well, especially because he's a plus defender. At second base specifically. And that's where he's playing. And then they have guys like, Dalbec, who I'm not as big on, but he had a killer spring training, and at minimum, he can be like a power hitter. And just because of his profile, you're looking kind of at like he's either going to walk, strike out, or hit a homer, and because the league doesn't really know him, he should be effective this season. And then they got like Marwin Gonzalez, another guy who should fit the ballpark really well. I think he's going to probably be like their main left fielder, but they also have Franchi Cordero, who has great analytics, and he has hit at every level, but no one's really given him a full opportunity at the big league level to just play day in, day out for like a full season. And I get the idea that they'd rather start off with Marwin as a super utility type and start off with Cordero as the everyday left fielder and actually give him that opportunity. So that's going to be interesting to say the least. But that's a dynamic lineup. That's a dynamic offense. A lot of power there, base running there, lefty righties. Like it's a full offense right there. Every pitcher that's going out is giving them a chance to win. If you're looking at the other teams in that division, you have Tampa Bay, who is starting, like Chris Archer, and they're starting, Glass now as their number one, basically. Their rotation, they literally lost two aces. They lost Snell and they lost Morton. Okay. That's like 60-something games of elite production that, was giving them a chance to win the game that they're down after 1 year. And then, of course, a lot of their players are players that were polished plays, not top prospects. A lot of their players are guys who they did great in the minors, but historically, these guys, once the league knows how to pitch to them, they become league average big leaguers. And I think that's even started to play with guys like Yandy Diaz, G-Man Choi. So that now they're platooning them to kind of negate that. But, with Joey Wendell, it even happened with. I think it's about to happen with Michael Broshow, and God forbid it happens with Arizarena, or God forbid Austin Meadows gets hurt again. Austin Meadows may not be quite the hitter that we thought he was. You have to platoon out center field as is. Adames, his strikeout ways caught up to him by the end of the year. So even Lowe was all first half. In the second half of the season, he was a league average hitter. So I think Tampa Bay's, knocked way down this year. And I think the Blue Jays are incredibly overrated. I felt that for a while, that if you put them head-to-head against the Red Sox, position to position, the Red Sox easily come out ahead. And if you compare the rotation, in terms of upside, the Jays are better. But if you're looking at, likelihood of pitching, full seasons and being effective and whatnot, it's the Red Sox. And then, I was going to say, maybe the Jays have a better pen, but now that Yates is out for the year, it's kind of a wash in the pen, or at least close. So, are you going to go with a lineup where Bo Bichette's entering his sophomore slump. You got Talise, you got Lourdes Gurriel, you got Vlad Guerrero, you got Springer, even though Springer is a little injured right now.
Mm-hmm.
And, guys who, like Teoscar Hernandez, he's Pedro Serrano, all power and all that, but he's trouble with certain breaking balls. And his numbers fell off as the year went on last year. You got Biggio, who's all walks. He's like kind of an infield version of Brandon Nimmo, but I don't even think he's that level. I don't think he's going to produce at that level. You got Jansen, about league average hitter. He's okay. And that's it, Whereas you look at the Red Sox, Devers proven, Bogart's proven, JD Martinez proven. Even Verdugo's been having good years in recent years. And they've added on to it. They've added players to that group. They still have Christian Vasquez. So, hard place to, fill production at catcher. I actually like catcher for the Red Sox with Vasquez better than I like it with Jansen, even just looking at things from the offensive perspective. Defensively, it's not close. Vasquez is better. But offensively, it's close. But I even like Vasquez better there because Vasquez is hot and cold, and that's how he gets to his league average. Whereas Jansen has to work the count just to hit for mistake power. That's why his walks are what they are. So yeah, I don't think that the offense is particularly close between those two teams. And then if you look at all the people within the Jays pitching staff, it's like Robbie Ray, who has trouble in the NL sometimes. Now he's moving to the AL as a lefty who walks people. You got Steven Matz, who's always hurt, and he's a lefty now moving to the AL. It's a worrisome rotation. Basically Nate Pearson's going from high A to the big leagues. He's barely pitched in Double A and Triple A. That's why whenever he pitched last year, but then he kept getting hurt because you don't do that with a pitcher. You don't take a guy from high A and you move him straight to the big leagues. So a lot of worries with this team. That's why I don't have the Blue Jays as the second best team in that division. I really do think that the Red Sox are going to do it, but I also can't imagine the Red Sox winning more than 90 games. So, and that's, odd because in recent years, there's always been multiple teams that were really good in the American League East, like really, really good, 95 wins and whatnot. Now there's going to be one. Wouldn't even surprise me if the Red Sox won 89 games. So, but Boston, the guys I like most for them, like I love Devers' bat, but he needs to be a first baseman. I love Xander Bogaerts. I love everything about him. I love Christian Vasquez. Love everything about him. I love JD Martinez. Great DH. And the rest of the players on that roster, like Verdugo, I like, but I think he might go through a little bit of a growth period. But that's fine. He's a lefty. He'll at least hit righties. That's the majority of the league. Full season at bats and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think my favorites are probably those guys. I'm a big Vasquez guy. I like Bogarts a lot. I like JD Martinez a lot, and I think people are kind of underrating what those guys can do when added to like Devers and a good year of Hunter Renfroe and even a Verdugo that is only hitting righties. Especially when you have a guy like Kike ahead of them, because like Kike knows his job. I mean, Kike's a ball player. He's the leadoff guy. Alex Cora announced it. He's the leadoff guy, so he's going to get on base for them. That's the job of the leadoff guy. So that's Boston.
I like this. I do. I like this. I think we have time for
Maybe
one more.
Yeah,
maybe one more. We're almost at the 2-hour mark, but we have time for one more.
Let's do one more.
Royals?
Sure, why not? The Royals have like re-signed a whole bunch of people recently. Merrifield re-signed, gave him extension. Dozier gave him an extension. Salvador Perez gave him an extension. They traded for Benintendi, who's got a few more years under contract. Talk about an ex-Red Sox. They signed Carlos Santana. They signed Carlos Santana to a deal this offseason, taking him away from the division rival Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe Carlos Santana, he bats like 315 in the Royals ballpark. So that works really well. It's perfect fit for him. And they're trying to kind of rebuild what they did a few years ago when the Royals were winning World Series, or not winning World Series. They could have won 2, but they didn't. They won 1. Madison Bumgarner stopped them from winning 2. But when they were at that stage, they had a very similarly built team. Hosmer was a lefty who could hit righties or lefties fairly evenly. He could play a good defense, but the main thing was that he could hit for contact. He could hit consistently, and he got on base. And the contact Carlos Santana doesn't have. He makes a lot of contact, sure, but because he's a switch hitter and not quite the caliber of hitter to all fields that Hosmer was, there's not the batting average there. But there is a lot of walks and there is enough contact. And given that he batted basically 315 in the Royals ballpark, they're presuming that his batting average will raise high enough where it'll be able to, approximate a Hosmer-like profile, maybe with a higher on-base percentage, but lower power. Well, no, similar power, lower power on contact, I guess I'll say. Whereas, Hosmer would be consistently 290, 300 plus. Carlos Santana is probably going to be about 285 at best. But he'll hit for similar power and he'll get on base more than Hosmer did when Hosmer was there. Similar kind of defense as well. Both of them immensely healthy players. Sal Perez is better than he was during the years that the Royals were contending, and he was there. They have Hunter Dozier, who they've brought back on, an extension. And Dozier's pretty good at hitting for success on balls in play. And I think that's partially where they're going to make up for their loss in Hosmer, because I think that Dozier's a better player than Moustakas was when Moustakas was there, and he was their previous third baseman. Their old shortstop was Alcides Escobar, who could not hit at all unless it was a big moment. And he could really run the bases and really play defense. And I think that that's very similar to Mondesi. Mondesi, like Alcides Escobar, is a former top prospect who can really run the bases and who can really play defense. But he can't really hit that well. But if it's a big moment, I've seen him do certain things. So they're kind of trying to approximate that kind of player with him as well. At second base, the Royals ended up going out and adding someone. They ended up adding Zobrist. So it makes sense to me why they kind of have that position fairly open right now. In the outfield, I think Whit Merrifield is their version of Lorenzo Cain. Someone who can hit about 15, 20% above league average, who can really run the bases and be a good defender. They got him on an extension. He's going to be, I believe, their right fielder. They're comparing Benintendi to Alex Gordon. Alex Gordon was a much better defender than Benintendi ever has been. But, they're both similar types of hitters. Gordon, I think, is once again a better hitter, but, you have Benintendi, he's more patient, which I think is like the biggest difference between this Royals team and the last Royals team, is that this one's a lot more patient. This one's going to walk a lot more. And then they brought back Dyson. So Dyson from the old Royals team is back as well. They just really need a second baseman. I don't believe in Nicky Lopez, but their offense is almost complete. If they were to move Merrifield back to second, and then they were to go get, say, Yasiel Puig, then they'd have a full offense. I don't really like their pitchers. They need to grow, all of them. I do like that they've brought back some of their older relievers that didn't do well only because they went to the Colorado Rockies, and now they're back and doing what they used to do. I would have liked it if they were able to bring back Jake McGee. That would have been really cool, but I believe he's the closer in San Francisco now.
Mm-hmm.
But they do have Holland, and they did bring back Wade Davis. So that's kind of cool to see. I just don't think that they are. I think this is a shadow of the team that they were. It's not quite the team that they were. It's like if someone tried to draw, me. Like it'd be like, oh, that's me, but that's a drawing. It's not a picture. It's not, actual me. It's a drawing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how I feel about the Royals. Like they definitely now have a team, and seemingly they have this team locked up long term.
Mm-hmm.
I just, I'm not going to really be believing in this team until A, they get that last player, and B, until they fix up their pitching staff.
Yeah.
Once they do that, they're in a great spot, but their pitching staff's not there. They do have some prospects, though, that are interesting. Even their bullpen's not really there. But I will say that, them going out and getting Benintendi, very smart. Them going out and getting Carlos Santana, very smart move. Re-signing Dozier, given how hard it is to find third baseman, I get it, especially from where they're operating. Re-signing Sal Perez is the smartest move that they've done. It's very hard to find catching like that. So, and I think that it extends to like bringing back Merrifield, given his multi-position eligibility. I guess I understand. It's just. This is not a complete team to me. They are lacking quite a few things, but they're now not hopeless. They're now not like in contention for one of the worst teams. Now they are actually making grounds, and it wouldn't take more than a couple of moves for them to really start, making waves, because they have the surrounding players. If they were to go out and trade for Jerks and Profar, or they were to go out and they were to bring in one of the best hitters in the league, like if they somehow got JD Martinez or something like that, right? Put him in the outfield, then move Merrifield to second. Offense would be set. If they go out and they get two pitchers, pitching staff would be set. They go out and get two relievers, bullpen would be set. But they need to do all of those things in order to put themselves in that position. And I think that's what we got for today, right?
That's what we have, man. That's what
takes us right up to the point.
Yep. And, before we go, as always, at the end of every single podcast episode, I tell everyone, be sure, hit the description up, look at all the stuff that James is dropping. James works really hard on all of his baseball statistics. He works really hard to put together his list of the best players. He works really, really, really hard on all things baseball. I mean, my guy is like literally at the training games texting me like, you won't believe the news I have for tonight. Be sure, drop into the description, do yourself a favor, hop on the podcast, hit that subscribe button, make sure you're tuning in, because I'm telling you, you're not going to get better information anywhere else. And then also, while you're at it, check out the newsletter down in the description, subscribe to it, find out what we're listening to, what we're playing, what we're watching weekly as we kill time while producing all this great content that we throw at you.
And I'll tell you, we got a new newsletter that's going to be coming out very soon. And we also have my yearly, top players list. But this one's coming out. I've expanded this year to work with pitchers. And because, it was a 60-game season last year, I was also able to review every single team's minor league system and figure out which guys are going to be making impacts this year. So all of the, players that are going to be having big years, all of it's been updated. And I'm going to have that out on saberscouts.com. It'll cost a little tiny bit, and then you'll get access to it for the year. It's not like a monthly fee or anything like that. Got to keep things running. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time. Peace out.
Peace out.